Thanks. Yeah, just a minute about a conference that's coming up in the school mid-October, and I started some cards. I'll pass some more this way. It's going to be a really unique 2 days. 8 speakers are coming from France, and there are 8 U.S. speakers on the changing conceptions of landscape after the Second World War. People starting to think about the everyday landscape and valuing it the way designed landscapes had been earlier. So these are landscape architects, photographers, historians. One of the focal points will be J.B. Jackson, a cultural landscape writer who lived near Santa Fe and published a magazine in the 1950s and 60s that really started the field of cultural landscape studies. If you want to come to the conference, you've got to go on the conference website and register, but there will be some elements of the conference open to everyone. There'll be 2 sessions screening films about Jackson, and then there are 3 exhibitions on campus that are coordinated with the conference. One here in the school, one at the Art Museum, one in the library. So register and come to the conference as you can, or dip into the film screenings and the exhibits.
Chris,
yeah.
Registration for students is only $5.
Yeah, registration for students is $5, so it's, the coffee breaks and receptions will more than make up for your $5. plus none.
Chris, so this evening I'm very honored to introduce Kim Yao. Kim and I collaborated together in an office called Architecture Research Office, where she's now principal of the firm. I have to give you a couple background things because I typically do that. She has an undergraduate degree from Columbia College and Columbia University and her Master of Architecture from Princeton. She's also taught at Barnard College in Columbia and also taught at Parsons in New York City. That kind of almost tells you nothing really about her other than she's super smart. But one of the things that I know about Kim from having worked with her, from the very first day she started at the firm, is that she was destined to be where she is right now. She's a warm and super smart person who has the capacity to think strategically about all aspects of design. She has the capacity to think conceptually, technically, theoretically, and in the process of working with her, the thing that I loved about working with her is that she always had a really important question that challenged a basic assumption, but it was never in a way that challenged the person. It was about trying to always get at the best possible design idea and pushing the intellectual content, the technical content, and the aesthetic content simultaneously. It's one of the things I really appreciated about working with her. The firm that she is a part of, it's a firm that I know from having worked there many, many years ago. So I don't feel responsible for where they're at right now. It's extraordinary work they're doing right now. And I feel that one of the things that they do well, though, is work across the scales of the built environment. Everything from planning studies to close collaboration with landscape architects on doing landscape scale work, to really smart buildings, to really interesting interiors, to objects and product design. And so it's one of those few firms that's able to do all those things successfully, and I think you'll love seeing the work. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Coming on a Friday night to talk a little bit about architecture. Should I lower the lights a little bit? Or I don't know how to control your setup.
It's number 4.
And I think John just gave you the best possible introduction because he said how I feel about what we do in the office. As he said, we are a 3-principal firm, so I have 2 partners, Adam Rutsky and Stephen Cassell, and we have a 25-person office based in New York. We're about a little over 20 years old, like 23 years old. I have to do the math. And what John said is exactly right, which we are very committed to engaging a range of types of work, both in the city and across the country at different scales and different programs or programmatic types. So I usually start with this little intro to say that work is governmental. Some of these are old favorites that John will recognize. We still call these our like our beauty shots, like starting with the beauty shots for projects we're really proud of in the public realm, in a heart of Times Square in this instance, or a beautiful house that John worked on many years back and that I worked on underneath him in Colorado. We still do a lot of high-end residential and house design, higher education projects. This is the School of Architecture at Princeton. And projects in the public realm. This is a renovation addition to the North Pavilion at Union Square Park in Manhattan, or in New York. So for us, we're committed to a belief that architecture is created out of a deep engagement with our clients and with the context in which their projects occur. And the diversity in our work is representative of that. And reflects that place in those people or that client in those contexts. On a scale of small and big, both project types and also in terms of sustainability, is that stretch? It's okay, sorry. I'm just realizing the proportion is off. This is a small passive house we did in Syracuse, New York. Certified passive house, $150,000 square foot budget, or budget for the whole project. To sustainability at the scale of a city. This is a project we did in collaboration with Beeline Studio for Rising Currents, which is an exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art called A New Urban Ground, which was about designing a new urban ecology and urban infrastructure to create a more resilient edge around Manhattan. And some current projects or recent projects we have in the office. This is a pavilion at Brooklyn Botanic Garden in Brooklyn, and some other projects on the Brooklyn waterfront, maintenance and operations buildings for the park, and boat pavilions that we're doing at both the north and south end of Brooklyn Bridge Park. A foundation on the Upper East Side. This is a landmark townhouse, full-scale renovation of the outside and inside, and houses that we're doing from California to Connecticut right now in the office. So that across all of these project types, I think what unifies our work is our approach and in a way our process and how we engage each client and what we prioritize as themes in what we do. And so for us, that kind of comes down, I think, to two categories: making and materiality, and just a real love of exploring materials and the tectonics of creating things. That was an earlier study and a more recent screening that we did a number of years back for a residential client. And then strategic thinking and planning for clients. So in this instance, it could be at the scale of the building, but basically planning the future of the building, whether it's programming or its evolution over time. This is part of a plan for Harvard's Graduate School of Design, or planning at the scale of the city. This is part of a strategic framework we did for the Alliance for Downtown New York, which is a business improvement district in Lower Manhattan. So that kind of love of making stuff and still doing, making models and working in analog ways and using digital tools, and also really strategically thinking about what the goals are for a project and how we can make each project really tailored to and suited to its particular client. So what I wanted to share with you today is a bunch of stuff, a bunch of projects. I probably have way too many slides, so I'm going to go very fast. So we talk about breadth and depth in the office, so this will probably be breadth and some depth, but I wanted to share. And some of the things are very recent projects that haven't been professionally photographed yet, so you'll see some very sad looking, some sad photographs. I just wanted to warn you, but I wanted to structure it this way to show you a bunch of contrasts in scale and type of work and type of project, so to show that diversity that I was talking about. So to start, we did this project north of the city in Beacon, New York. It's an industrial waterfront that was a brownfield site, and our client was Scenic Hudson. I love this project because it sort of has these two essential pieces: the barn and the shed, or the barn and the boat pavilion. And the site was reclaimed, and we worked with Reed Hildebrand, who's the landscape architect, they had been doing work on this site for some time. So Scenic Hudson's mission is to, in part, protect the viewshed of the Hudson River. They basically, help conserve forest and property so that the viewshed to the Catskills Mountains is maintained. And this project consists of the boat pavilion and the education center. The education center is housed in the barn. It's an iconic structure on the site that was much loved by the community. And we opened up the building, did a entire renovation of the structure, and then fitted out the interior so it could support artist studios, flexible classrooms, like the farmers market on the weekend and community meetings during the week. It's used for adult lectures and child, education in classrooms. So that kind of very utilitarian structure. As you move towards the water, the boat pavilion is situated in the landscape. These beautiful kind of berms that Reed Hildebrand proposed as part of the reclamation of the site. And a very simple structure that celebrates this transition of land to sky and land to water, and frames our view of the horizon. So the structure literally is the deck. That deck or dock extends into the river and is the launching pad for all the boats. A very simple steel and aluminum structure for the housing or the shed of the boats themselves, and then a roof structure that also has a PV array on top that powers the barn. So very simple structure that celebrates the boats. The boats are part of the display and part of the architecture. It's very utilitarian. And literally those boats get pulled out. The pipe rail is again part of the system and part of the architecture, and they launch directly out into the Hudson. So it's a very beautiful spot. Two simple structures that I think also speak a little bit about a significant part of our work, which involves adaptive reuse and historic preservation because of the fact that we're based in New York. So, and I mean, I guess that occurs in many other contexts too, but a significant part of work is interiors work or restoration work. And so you'll see that in some of the examples that I showed today. An interior, Knoll. We started working with Knoll a few years back. Knoll is, if you don't know, is an iconic American design company focusing on furniture and textiles. And when we started our work with them, we began by looking back at Florence Knoll's own designs for showrooms for the company from the mid-century, some in California and in the Midwest, and trying to think about the ways that she used elements to separate out spaces in the showroom and to create an environment where the furniture could be displayed in alternative settings. So we were sort of inspired by her work. And when we started working with the company for their New York City showroom and flagship offices and design studios, we began by thinking about those simple techniques of how to break up the space and allow it to be occupied by the user making their way through this showroom, and to be flexible and adaptable for future displays and transformations. The other thing we realized is that the building has this, they moved from the meatpacking district in a massive industrial building to a corporate skyscraper in Midtown, right down the block from MoMA. And we realized that a big opportunity was also the facade of the building, that we could brand the base of the skyscraper so that it announced the company's presence there, and also take advantage of the ceiling of the second floor, which is part of that kind of storefront display for the company. So really thinking about its relationship to its context and the fact that they were moving from an amazing space that was all in one story and had panoramic views of the river, of the Hudson River, to this Midtown skyscraper that didn't have the same kind of view opportunity, but had this really visceral connection to the street. So the ability to stand in the showroom and feel like you're in the middle of Midtown and interacting with the cabs and the sort of life of the street, and to have that kind of life be aware of what's happening in the showroom. So one of the other key components of this was mapping and thinking through the visitor's experience. How would someone who is shopping for furniture come through the space? How would a client come through the space? And how could we extend the realm of the showroom, which is on the second floor of their now 3 floors. We extend that realm up through the actual workspace of the company to the sales floors and the executive offices, which also has design studios. So this was a project that was about kind of mapping that experience and imagining ways that it could transform and that people could visit, go through the showroom, and then go up into the office spaces and realize this is actually, like, I can see Noel at work, I can see their products at work, I can understand how this could apply to my life. So here, this is a sort of view of the exterior of the building. You can see we use this red curtain around the perimeter. That's a textile inspired by an Annie Albers textile from that was in the Noel archive, done in custom red, so that kind of defines the base of the skyscraper and announces the presence of the company. And then we did the retail shop on the bottom. It's their first global shop, which is an actual point of purchase sale opportunity for the public. When visitors go up to the second floor to the showroom, they're greeted with this timeline, which we did in collaboration with projects. One thing that John also alluded to is that we love to collaborate with people. So I'll mention that we photo brand and landscape architects and different designers. We learn a lot from the people we work with. That applies to working both in the studio, but also obviously all the specialists and people that you engage with to kind of get buildings done. So for us, in this particular instance, this was with projects who did the wayfinding and graphics for the space, but also created this great installation to tell the story of the company and to give them the opportunity to put up new exhibitry to explain and launch product or to tell new histories to visitors. On the showroom floor, there's this massive, sorry, I keep looking to make sure it's not cropping. There's this massive sample wall, which they always had in their Chelsea space as a smaller feature, so we basically took that and expanded it tenfold to make a backdrop for the showroom space. And then used elements like the picture rail or the frame rail at the top to define these zones of experience on the floor. So much like Florence Knoll's original designs, we use that rail to hang super graphics or textiles and drapery so that the showroom can be divided up in different ways for different modes of occupation and for different displays over time. So they change it a lot because it is a showroom and it's about selling furniture and it's about selling fabric. And so the other thing that we did is we took some of their product lines and had this great opportunity. They launched like, I think, 4 launches of textiles annually. They come out with fabric constantly, and they also, prior to us starting this project, had recently acquired 2 companies, Phillips Felt, which is a felt company, and Spinny Bed Leather. And so we wanted to take that opportunity to use those materials and architectural applications in the space as a provocation for other designers to come through and say, well, I can spec this, I can do something, I can customize it, I can apply these things in innovative ways. And so we used felt on one of the stairs. If you recall, I mentioned that they went from 1 floor to 3 floors, so there was all of this angst about how they were going to go from all being on 1 big floor to 3 stacked floors and what it meant for not just user and visitor circulation, but actually for employees. So we talked a lot about the nature of that workspace and how the stair as a connecting element could encourage meetings between colleagues and actually shorten the distance, even though it's vertical distance, of traveling from one office to another if you're working with someone in the company. So the stair became a device for promoting their own kind of work culture and also this opportunity for displaying the fabric. So here, felt, and then the second one, which connects the 3rd and 4th floors, which are the sales and executive floors, clad in leather. And then additional kind of architectural applications of the material. This is felt done in this corrugated pattern in a number of the phone booths, and we did sort of felt and leather in different places, as well as the drapery kind of pieces that you saw. So this is a view of the 3rd floor sales floor. You can see the red at Annie Albers. On the 3rd floor, it's one big open plan, and the center has communal spaces, the phone booths, conference rooms, some offices. And the sales team and marketing team sit out here in the workspace. When you get up to the 4th floor, the plan inverts. So we pull to the perimeter executive offices and design studios because the designers really need that daylight. The textile designers need the daylight from the outside. And then we borrow daylight and bring it to the center, which is a kind of gallery space for archival furniture pieces. And you can see some of the textile and drapery that we use to layer on that interior glass. And then back down to the ground floor, this is just a detail of the shop. The shop is very small and it doesn't connect up directly to the 2nd floor, so when you visit, you have to go into the building lobby and then go up. But it's a really nice moment because the public can just go in without their, architect, which is good sometimes. So we took what we did in New York, and now we're doing it in some other places. So we did, on the heels of finishing the New York showroom, we did a showroom for Nola in San Francisco, and I just wanted to share this with you to point out that we took, the idea here in working with a company is creating an architecture that speaks about them, not about us, but about what they do and represents their company. And so we took certain features and ideas that we used in the New York City showroom and have applied those to different markets. So this is San Francisco, very different context. Their kind of client base is different in San Francisco. And so in this instance, they're also in a skyscraper, but it's a historic building, and so we let the shell of the building really reveal itself. And instead of having more finished spaces, we sort of show off all of the concrete and the brick at that existing shell, and again use the materials to define these different spaces. More felt than leather, because San Francisco is not really a leather market, that's what we heard, and wall covering and glass. Out of those collaborations, we started this conversation with Noel about launching a product line, and kind of informed by our own interest in texture and pattern and surfaces. That product line launched a couple of years ago, and it's a mouthful. It's called the Architecture Research Office Collection. But it basically took those ideas of creating architectural finishes, and we released these high-performing acoustic architectural finishes, primarily in felt. And then this year we're launching some of the designs in leather. So this is just a detail of the Noel showroom in Chicago that shows like plank in, can be vertical or in a bench configuration like this, and some of the perforated screens. And then we also updated it for leather. On the right-hand side, you can see leather here. So just, these are faced with felt and leather, but have this different acoustic substrates, so they're very absorptive, and then have this kind of very luxurious outer finish. So it's just a detail. And they're modular, so you can basically plug them in different configurations. So this has been fun. Like the Noel is like having a little affair with the company, but it's like this great experience of continuing to engage them, and they have an amazing team, and we love working with them. So this is one of our screens. And this is a little shot from Houston. We're just finishing the Houston showroom right now. And you can see at the ceiling, there are white baffles. So that's another acoustic product that we launched that are kind of acoustic baffles for open ceiling applications. And we're using those in Houston. So this is, they're just moving in shortly. So back to the Bronx, or back to New York. We started a couple years ago a project for Riverdale Country School, which is a private school in the Riverdale neighborhood of the Bronx. And it's the first time we've worked with a lower school instead of a higher education or college or university. They have this beautiful site on the east side of the Hudson River, which is in a protected special natural area district because of the rock and foliage and trees in the area. Right above the site is Wave Hill, which is a large botanic garden. It's up here. You can see the mouse. And then the site of the campus is here. This is their lower school campus, and the school has two campuses. So for this client, the charge was how to create a great academic building that reflects the pedagogy of the school, how do we allow the students the opportunity to engage their environment. This school is amazing because they have all these buildings strung along the line, and the kids go in and out, so they don't stay in like their homeroom. If they have like Spanish class or dance class or art class, they go outside and go to a different building, much like you would on the campus, even though they're little, they're younger kids. So the site plan, because it's along that hill, all the buildings are sort of strung along a row, and the senior and junior buildings are actually historic homes. The site is one parcel of what used to be a much larger estate many years ago, and it has been since divided up. And so this piece belongs to the school, but has these historic homes which are now repurposed as academic buildings. Our building is the future purpose building. We replaced a building that was really dysfunctional that was on the same site, and basically kind of continue this line of buildings in a row on one edge of the site with the hill behind, and then the fields and the river down below. You can see here this whole complex. I'm going to come back to that in a second, but those are temporary classrooms that we just opened. So in starting this project, we sort of looked at the whole campus and said how you organize your kids. It's pre-K through 5. Where do they learn? What kind of spaces do they need? And we realized that it would be really beneficial for the school and for the buildings to reorganize like everybody. So instead of just doing the one building, we touched many buildings, but we basically created in their other large academic building a pre-K through 2nd grade classroom. So that really becomes an early learning center or early learning building. And then the new Perkins building will be with classrooms for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, plus multipurpose theater and student-centered spaces. So the sort of shift so that the kids and the administration that supports that faculty can be dedicated to their individual spaces, and then have other spaces on campus that they come to collaborate. These are those 2 buildings, those 2 houses on either side. So one of our challenges here was just to do something quiet. Like we wanted the building to connect to the outside, but to be very low slung in this landscape of the trees and the hill and these historic homes on either side. And we wanted a palette that was complementary to those houses, but not trying to fit in, not being another brick on the campus. And so this is the west elevation. Right now we're doing a combination of zinc paneling and custom lightweight concrete panels on bottom in blue. And these are some details of our modeling. We're using Grasshopper and scripting to kind of work on the paneling so that from our initial design concept, we could take those panels and actually plan out the whole facade with radius and everything and make sure that we can fabricate it in reasonably sized pieces. What you'll notice is that we were thinking about wood. So some of the renderings, we did all these fundraising renderings, and the renderings some show wood and some show something that looks like zinc, but that's because we were originally thinking of wood and we switched to zinc. So this shows the building kind of situated in that landscape with one of the houses, the senior building in the distance there beyond it. It's a 2-story building, and the great thing about that is that each level connects directly out to either side. So the classrooms have spaces that open up to the exterior, both on the field side and on the hillside, which is great. And our whole concept for that is also that the kids basically are aware of their environment, learn about some of the sustainable concepts in the building, but also are kind of encouraged to have an awareness of the outside, the landscape, the sun, their kind of place in the world. So this is a ground floor plan. The building is organized around commons, which is the center spine of circulation that has these little breakout spaces. Those are the little nooks in the middle. And then classrooms in the middle with an anchor on each end, multipurpose theater and student center. And the idea of the commons is that it's a space for the kids to break out of the classroom in smaller groups to do work. So this is gray on the top because the building is nestled into the hill, so it only opens up on one side. This is the wood version, so you can see. And this entry is right next to the theater, so these classrooms, again, will open up down to the fields. And then on the upper floor, the classrooms on the riverside have a great view of the water, of the river, and then on the hillside, they open up to the backside. So the building is very integrated with the campus, and really the Commons idea comes from this fundamental reality, which is that the kids are moving from building to building, and so really this building is just seen as another connector piece that allows children to pass through it, whether they're going here or going from these classrooms to other buildings on campus. This is a view of the backside on a hill with those spaces outside the classroom that will be used for teaching. And a view of one of the classrooms. So in this project, we collaborated with Open, Scott Stoll of Open, who's a really amazing graphic designer. We've worked with him for a number of years, and he came up with this concept of having these sort of provocative graphics that would be used in the classroom and in the common spaces to promote interaction and learning and sort of teaching opportunities. And so this is just a detail of some of those graphics. We also have graphics that are obviously about sustainability and understanding the performance of the building and the usefulness of certain things that the kids are seeing in their environment. You can see some of those graphics here in the middle. So in the commons space, there are, all the surfaces are workable surfaces. So they're tappable walls, writable walls. The idea here is that kids will break out and do independent work. And then on the upper floor of those commons, there are skylights that animate that hallway. So the hallway strings the classrooms together, and then there's a stair at both the north and south ends, right next to the theater and student center hubs. That shows you the section with 3 of the 4 skylights. And the skylights, we're doing these installations to create like a sundial and prisms so that there's daylight and color that will change over the course of the day and over the course of the year. So those installations will animate the skylight spaces. And like in this instance, we're mapping kind of solar path, again, using graphics that Scott worked on so that the architecture really speaks to the environmental conditions that the building exists in. This is a view from the student center out to the river. So the learning complex is this little village of trailers that opened like 2 weeks ago. And so to do the building, we took a whole building that they use right now and demolished it, which was hard. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, so 9 classrooms are living in trailers for 1 year. And so for this project, we took that same concept and said, okay, the commons is really important. We have this cluster of trailers. Let's generate a site plan that creates that common space or those core communal spaces on the outside of the trailers and gather the grades by group. They have a lot of, they wanted to encourage grade identity so that the 3rd graders felt like they were 3rd graders and the classrooms were near each other, that teachers who are working with the same type of curriculum were near each other. So we took that commons concept and applied it to the learning complex, which I think is a very funny name, but the headmaster came up with it. And organized these trailers, and in the center there are 2 studios, one called Blank and one called Fold. We also call them Look and Make. And for this complex, we worked with Open on the graphics, which you can see the super graphics here. These are my photos, so again, I apologize. And with Rockwell Group, the Rockwell Group had done some visioning for the school several years ago on outdoor learning spaces and kind of, installation opportunities. So this just opened, and Scott's concept also is that this was sort of a campsite for the students, and so he actually rolled out this whole program working with faculty and students where they created a menu of graphics and logos and icons and said, let the students vote, so that the 3rd graders had their color palette, their pattern, their logo, and that those patterns and colors become the kind of wallpaper or the facades of the buildings. And then each grade has a flag. So the flags are hand-sewn, and they actually had like this great flag raising ceremony, like with the school song being sung and bugles playing. It was kind of amazing, and you can see the kids gathering around one of the flags here. That's one of the historic homes in the background. So everybody loves it. I'm very afraid now that they're not going to like the building as much as they like the trailers. So we're sort of like having a little bit of anxiety about that. But it's been very well received. They're going to be walking through these spaces through the winter, so we'll see how it goes. But it's been a fun project. It's a temporary project. 1 year of construction. By next fall, the new building will be done, and these will be gone, and this will be returned to an athletic kind of playing field. Lakeside house, very different kind. This is a private home in Minnesota, and this project is fun because there's this existing house. We did a major renovation of the house, and the house was built in the 1970s, but in a classical plan, perfectly symmetrical plan. And the original facade of the house has had all of this sort of ornament, and very intense interiors actually too. So that our client purchased the home because of the house on the site. And then we have worked with this client for many years on different projects. So we were tasked with transforming this house to support their lifestyle and their art collection. So this was the existing view of the outside. And then this is sort of transformed new facade, which shows kind of this stripping down, redoing all the stucco on the exterior of the building, replacing like the beige stucco with limestone, replacing the paint cornice with like a zinc cornice. So kind of quieting down some of the embellishment and articulating with a kind of truer materiality some of the details. So this, and then replacing the glass, replacing like the windows throughout the whole house. We didn't really touch the plan. The plan is great. It's perfectly symmetrical, and there's these two courtyards in the middle. There's the land side and the lake side. The two courtyards, as I said, and a gallery space with the main living room in the middle that has a glazed daylight. And then these 4 spaces that surround the courtyards. The 2 on the land side, we wanted to make really intense, kind of rich material interiors. One is a family room and one is a library or a study. And then the 2 on the lake side, we wanted to be really bright and light-filled and really more about looking at the lake than thinking about the room. So I just wanted to share some of these photos. This is fairly recently completed. This is of the gallery space. The house also has like 14-foot ceilings on the inside. So it's 1 story, like this crazy house, and really high ceilings. And so it's great. The space was great. Obviously, like it was a major renovation. And so here you can see that center living room space, the kind of glazed skylight at the ceiling, and views and glimpses to the gardens. We worked with Shane Cohen on the landscape design. A view of that middle space and fireplaces. Pretty quiet architecture as a backdrop for their collection of beautiful things, and views to the gardens. The gardens have water features on the right. You can see that there's a little water rippling down the limestone, so that's just for a little sound and to reflect light. And then these more intense, materially rich interiors. This is the family room with details, millwork, lacquer, bronze, and little tweaks, like taking the millwork panel here, you can see that it's asymmetrical. So playing a little bit with some of the traditional details because of the classical plan in the house, and changing them. That's a view out towards the lake. And these brighter lakeside rooms. And views of the gallery spaces terminate with windows that look out towards the water. And then this is the master bathroom. So simple house in some ways, that's about its connection to the landscape. Very formal kind of plan. Very different project. Brown University. We've done a lot of projects for Brown, and we just finished. So these pictures are going to be really bad. So I apologize. We just finished a new building, a little building, 3-story office building for the applied mathematics department. we've done work with some of the mathematicians at Brown before, and they're currently housed in, the rest of their department is in this house here on the left, which is like a Richardson Romanesque, massive, beautiful old home that they occupy. And then our building is actually an enabling project for a much larger engineering building that Kieran Timberlake is doing further up on the quad. And so we completed this project very quickly, our first design build project. We were a sub-consultant to the contractor, but it's a contractor we worked with, and really Brown is the person who's controlling everybody in this scenario, so it's all about making the university happy. But our project is a simple building, and the mathematicians will move into it. They'll then have these two sides of the green, and where they're housed now, the little buildings they're in are going to be removed to make space for this new building, so that's just starting now. So we actually worked with, that's just been Dr. Nickel on landscape design. They're doing the whole landscape for the whole block plan for the engineering quad also. And they have this concept of garden rooms because our site is on the corner of the campus and faces a residential area. So I mention that because the ground floor spaces, which you can see on the left, kind of open up into those garden rooms, and the mathematicians are planning on standing outside and meeting and using the rooms as part of their teaching and learning space. The building is for faculty, doctoral candidates, graduate students, so it's a very quiet, studious bunch of mathematicians. They're pretty reserved, and it's really a little office building. So there's office spaces around the perimeter, and then center eddy spaces, which are for collaborative work on the second and third floors. And in those eddy spaces, we have writable walls they like chalk. The mass of the building was one of the sort of challenges because it's on this prominent campus corner, right adjacent to a very beautiful historic street of residential homes that are not part of the campus. So Providence has a lot of beautiful old architecture, and so our building was tasked with having to kind of navigate these two scales, institutional to residential, and to situate itself in a way that still announced the university but felt okay on the scale of the street. So this massing, plywood massing, helped us do that by shifting the volume of the building. So on the street side, which is the Hope Street side there, you can see it pulls back so that it breaks down the scale, kind of like a mansard roof would do or something on the street side. And on the green side, it announces itself towards the green and creates a covered area for some of that outdoor work, outdoor calculating. So a big part of our project here was thinking about what the building would look like, what its material should be, what would it be clad in, and we gravitated towards a richer kind of material palette and color, but not brick, because there's like 20 kinds of brick on the block, plus paint and like all these houses and lots of different colors of brick. So we felt like a deep red was appropriate, but that brick would be the wrong sort of direction. So we started by looking at terracotta. These are studies of terracotta shingles. These are studies of more shingles. We like to do pattern studies. And then we ended up going back to Corten steel. Good old Corten steel, like Telluride House, 3 shingle overlap. So the shingles overlap and the pattern shifts. So it's hard to tell from these shots, but when you look at the facade from one side or the other, the pattern reads differently because of the shadow on the surface. So this was a very hard process to kind of get to this point. But the great thing is that the Corten has this really deep color, and it's beautiful with all the brick, but it's crisp, it's modern, it's not historic. This is a rendering of the building. It's the little one in front, the big one in the back is a physics building. And then this is that facade that faces the green. The garden rooms are in the foreground. This is a recent shot. They just moved in, so we're going to photograph this soon. It's a shot from our project director who took this from the street side. There's cast, kind of corrugated cast stone is the gray, and then from the green side, it's a little kind of utilitarian office building. And then on the that gives you a sense of what the shingles are like. On the inside, the floor plan has these, again, these are construction shots. It's very rough, so I apologize, but I'm excited about these things that are new, so I wanted to share them. But there's these two stairs, a north stair and a south stair, a front stair and a back stair. It's kind of like a house, but it's an office building. And so this is the front stair, connects to the lobby space. The lobby opens to the green on one side and to the street on the other. And then as you go up, you come out onto these eddy spaces, and they're collaborative breakout spaces from the perimeter offices. So this is a rendering, writable walls in different colors. All they wanted was chalk and not pen, not dry erase marker. So this is during the furniture installation, so that's a shot of the space as they're moving in. And then this is a view of the third floor, which is a narrower floor plate that has skylights at the top. And this is a photograph of that floor looking the other way. So right now, these walls haven't been chalked. We actually specify that the contractor has to go through and chalk the wall and then create this even coating of dust. Otherwise, it looks really bad. Judd. So they're a different client, very different project. We started a project a number of years ago for the Judd Foundation, which is based in New York. Donald Judd, amazing, great minimalist artist, purchased this cast iron building in Soho in 1968 and lived and worked in this building until his death in 1994. He purchased this building and worked here before he also started his residence and studios in Marfa. So this is sort of where he began some of his thinking about art in place, and then continued to use this as his New York City base, as well as obviously working on Marfa. So this project I wanted to include because this project is everything about Judd and says very little about ARO other than how we approach work for a client like this. This project is one that is about orchestrating a complex team of specialists to allow the Judd Foundation to reopen this building. It didn't have a certificate of occupancy, didn't have any life safety systems, didn't have chemical systems to protect the art. So to allow the building to be reopened so the public could come in and see how Judd lived and worked, and see also how there was art installed in place that should be experienced in this place, because many of the pieces were designed and installed here purposefully and thoughtfully. They don't change. So our role here, this is an early Judd sketch, but it speaks to the programmatic zoning of the building. Like every floor has a different function: studio, kitchen and dining, bedroom, and they're all broken out by use. So our project, we really were the lead, and a design lead, mostly from the standpoint of making smart judgment calls about how to transform the building in a way where the architecture, his vision of the architecture is what's dominant, and everything else is subsumed to that purpose. So we work with an amazing historic preservationist architect in New York called Walter Melvin, and they took apart, we took the whole cast iron facade, which is a structural facade, apart, like 1,300 pieces that shipped to North Carolina. 430 pieces were recreated. All of them were restored in North Carolina and then shipped back to New York City and reassembled. So basically the whole building was taken apart and then put back together. It was reglazed. We had to go to Landmarks and make a pitch for saying that the building should be painted this color. This is Judd's color for the building, but it's not the historic color, obviously, for a cast iron building. So a lot of kind of technical machinations to allow the project to kind of come to fruition. Below grade, the Judd Foundation already had their office spaces in the below grade the sort of basement and sub-basement of the building. So this is just a great shot that shows how those amazing glazed sidewalks work in Soho, and how light can come all the way from that top corner down through multiple floors of the basement. But we did renovate down here, so this is more maybe us than Judd, but he had storage spaces that used the plywood at the lower level already, and Judd Foundation has their offices there now. So these are just some details of that little bit of our work. Sorry, I'm going to go quickly because it's that's going on, and the stair, and then upstairs at the ground floor, you can sort of see really what it's like now, which is untouched, but it was actually radically touched. So that's sort of the point. But a really kind of amazing space to visit. You can schedule a time and go see it. This is the dining and kitchen floor. These amazing, fully glazed facade, which is really tremendous. And then some pieces of art, like this sculpture you can see on the left, all the construction happened around it. So some sculpture was left in place, some murals were left in place during construction and protected, and then unprotected. And then this is just a detail that shows like there are always little sensors, very, very tiny, sensors for temperature and smoke that we had to integrate again so that the public could come into the building. So trying to allow certain things like exit signage to exist in our best ability without detracting from the interior. This is a detail about the staircase. He had this vision for an open stair. You can't really have an open fire stair in a building like this. So we worked with Eric, who did a computational fluid dynamic model to show smoke activity in the building, which you can see on the upper right, so that we can make a case to the fire department that we could use baffles tied into the fire alarm system to control smoke so that the stairs could stay open. So all of these sort of behind the scene efforts, this is a detail of that baffle to allow the building to kind of exist as much as possible and as close as possible to Judd's vision for it. Very light filled. I like to say this is a flavin piece that was custom designed for this site by Dan Flavin, and it's actually wired into our egress lighting. And so, in an emergency, it is exit lighting for the floor, which is like our most expensive exit light we've ever done. But it's there's no other lighting in the space. Like so, it was really important that we didn't add exit lights to this space because it's beautiful the way it is. This shows how the construction. So some details there. Okay, so at Tulane, I just have a couple more projects that I'm going to share. We did a residential college at the Newcomb College portion of the campus, which you can see here, originally designed by James Gamble Rogers. So this building is all about tying into the residential college system, fitting into the context of a historic college campus at this end, again, campus corner and residential context, and dealing with site constraints. We had a chapel that was done in the 60s, very poorly sited right here, we couldn't move it, and then these tremendous, huge, beautiful live oak trees that we needed to protect. So much of our work here was about trying to figure out how you could fit 256 beds for the dormitory, for the hall, on this little site without hurting the chapel and without hurting the tree. For a while, we flirted with the idea of moving the chapel, and then that wasn't going to be possible. This is just a diagram about all the programming pieces of the residential college. This is the first purpose-built residence hall as part of the residential college system, which the school has been rolling out. So that means that there's dormitories essentially that are clustered together, and they have faculty and residents, and so the components of the building include housing, but also include private apartments and social spaces and communal classroom and teaching spaces that are for students who don't live there. So it has a more active function on campus. And so for us, we organized a sort of dense program within this constrained footprint into two bars that connect the Newcomb Lawn Green into the courtyard of the building. We also used a courtyard plan because it's New Orleans, and the courtyard plan is like tight there, using daylight and passive ventilation where possible, although it's aeration. So the building is organized in these two L's with private rooms on the outside, so everybody has their own private view to the exterior, and all the social spaces on the inside, the corridors, the study lounges, and study spaces. This is that diagram of the courtyard. That model also allowed us, these are views of the common spaces on the ground floor, also allowed us to use it in terms of our material choices. So on the outside, we clad the building in brick to create a wrapper that was contextual and that was appropriate for the James Gamble Rogers plan. He had always planned for another building to be on this side of the quadrangle, so we wanted to choose a brick that matched the building's on the other side of the lawn. And then a zinc interior, zinc glass for the center of the courtyard, so something kind of crisp and bright, but muted, for the center courtyard space. Okay, very little, different scale house. We did this great chicken coop for a client in the Hamptons. Like best chickens ever, I guess. They're very well taken care of. And we diagrammed and thought about all the things you need for a chicken coop. Like how do you create optimal egg production? What temperature? Is it direct light or indirect light? Is there passive ventilation? How do you cool them? How do you protect them from predators? And what are the different breeds that we're going to house here? What is our precedent research? So this is like in a nutshell. We do this for every project. We actually like the precedents, the program, the environmental requirements, and we did it for this project. So this kind of encapsulates a little bit of our approach. What are the components of the coop? Scratch and grit and dust baths, manure, and then how do we think about, so it's organization and its plan, and then like what's the building, what's the essence of the building of this little shed. So we created this really simple form. We used a script to like generate all these profiles and then said, okay, which of the profiles we like the best for our little shed, and then we used a similar script for looking at shingle patterns, and we've been playing with this idea for shingles, metal shingles that have a folded corner. For a different client, we ended up having to change that cladding. So we wanted to test it out here. So it's basically this sort of prickly shingle pattern. This is showing the manure box open with these little bent aluminum corners, so that over the course of the day, the building is sort of animated in daylight. And then it has sort of plywood doors at the end. That's the roost. Those are the chickens. And they're very happy. And then finally, last project, we just opened the stadium. Big building, our biggest building that we've ever done. And this is not it, but this is the existing stadium, existing press box at the University of Cincinnati. So Nippert Stadium's this beautiful historic bowl stadium in the center of their campus. They have an urban campus. It's very dense. And it is literally a petting zoo of architecture. Michael Bay's, Morphosis, Shumi, Guathby Siegel, and all of these buildings like on top of each other. So our challenge was to create this addition to the stadium to provide club level, like lounge seating and studios and a larger press facility, and a new concourse to connect to the east side within this really dense context. So you can see here our sliver is inserted like literally 8 feet from Guathby Siegel, like 8 feet from Tangman, which is the student center, along this artery that is actually like full of utilities and duct tanks for the school. A simple concept, drop concrete piers, which you can see here, and then float the structure, this long spine, hovering above the edge, the west edge of the stadium, and trying to maintain some of the spaces on the campus that are really successful and great. They have what they call Main Street, which is this primary artery. Hargraves did the campus design here that you can see to the left of the landscape and hardscape. And then Bearcat Plaza, which is this space here in between. And trying to maintain those arteries for circulation as well as the views into the stadium. What's great about the green is that it's the campus green. Like, people go out and play frisbee down there, they hang out, they study, they take the kids down there. It's actually like the campus green for the school. Students are allowed to go down onto the field. There's only games 8 days in a year. So it's an active part of the campus, and we wanted to maintain all those connections even though we're dropping this like massive building into the middle of it. So this shows you a little bit of that context. Some historic buildings, the Morphosis at the top, Shuni, and our desire to create our new building with a kind of quieter facade in this context of all of this like architecture. This is the section. You can see how it lifts up, how close it comes to the student center, and then how the bowl kind of rolls down underneath it. So it's lifted so that you can go right up and see the green and our rendering, and then that's game day. So these are pictures that my partner Stephen took. So we haven't had this photographed yet, but from the green, the building wasn't done quite. They're finishing some of the fins on the exterior, but it's pretty great and amazing to see it occupied for this kind of exuberant event. So everyone was very excited. This is showing the bridge. You can see the glazing isn't quite, there's fins that kind of wrap the outside there on the left that aren't installed yet. And one of the center club level spaces. This is a rendering that shows we have these outdoor terraces that are going to be used for events and everything that have views, and then photos of the actual building. So on this end, there'll be additional fins that kind of tie that glass facade together. But this is that point that hovers above Bearcut Plaza, which you can see here in the middle. So students, like, they gather there on game day, and they gather there like every other day of the year. So it's sort of a really nice point where you can still see all the way through the building. And that's it. I just wanted to end by saying that I mentioned that we're about 22 years old a few years ago, and we asked John for pictures. I don't think we got. I think we got pictures of the kids. I think they were pictures of the kids. Pictures of people in the office, and we made this wall in our office to celebrate our 20th year anniversary. On one side, we showed all of the projects we've done over 20 years of practice in New York. On the other side, we showed pictures of every person. You could tell when we were pre-digital. Every person who'd ever worked in the office, and I include this and end with this just to say that for us, the most important project in our office is the office itself. We constantly talk about what we're doing, how we're making things, who we're collaborating with, how we can do it better, and how we can kind of promote the kind of studio and place that you want to go to and work at every day. So the office project is the most important one we have, but it's the facilitator for, you know, all the other great and fun things that we get to do. Thank you.
Maybe one or two quick questions. Anybody got a question? Come on, guys. Make sure you're studio instructor BNC I can't guarantee that.
I never ask questions either.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm not even sure what my question is, but I'm going to try to come up with one. The Donald Judd building, did you say you took apart not only the cladding on the structure, but also parts of the structural system?
Well, the cast iron is structural, and so there was significant shoring, but components of those structural columns were removed as well.
So you had to temporarily support piece
Yeah.
by piece and
Like needling and process. So, I mean, we rely significantly on wall development and historic preservation architects that we collaborate with on the facade work and the restoration, but we're not preservationists, we're not specialists. And an amazing, Skiami was a construction manager for that project, so a really amazing CM who could actually orchestrate the building. But it was a long construction process and an expensive project because of the requirements.
And what was her argument for being able to paint it that color with the historic?
With landmarks, I think that it's the last and only like singly owned building in Soho. And the Judd Foundation owns it because it was in Donald Judd's will. He endowed the foundation with maintaining the house as his only studio. So with landmarks preservation, we basically made the case that that was his color for the building. That was the way the building had been painted for the past, whatever, 50 years, 60 years. And that given its use and the significance of his work as an artist and his role in Soho, it was appropriate to allow it to remain that color. And they agreed. So it was basically kind of rooting it in a history that was not its original history, but a significant history for the neighborhood.
really impressive, the range of projects, the types, the locations, the client types, and yet all very rich. So thank you for sharing all of that with us. I'm wondering, with all that diversity in terms of the collaborations, who you're collaborating with, who you're collaborating with, who your client is, where the project is, and its program, how do you start?
Start each project, or we start by deciding who's going to work on it, which is always either fun or dangerous. But and we start by collaborating. So we have like an incredible office of people, many of whom have been in the office for a long time. So as John said, like we found the office in '93, or Adam and Stephen did. I started working there in '97 when John was there, and I've stayed obviously, and I'm very committed to being there. But we have a lot of other people who have been there for a very long time. So we start by talking about who's going to collaborate on it, which means most of the projects we do with 2 principals involved in every project. And then who the team will be within the office. And then we start building that team, and that's simultaneously on the owner's side, who can the owner be working with, and how do we start a series of meetings that are about conversations and being basically a good listener. What are your goals? What is your time frame? Like very simple concepts, but ones that are like you have to keep returning to. They're very foundational concepts that we return to throughout all of the design phases. So we talk about that like in a nuts and bolts way as being solid pre-design as a foundation for the project. So we start with the collaboration and the conversations, both internally in the office and then with the client team and with the consultant team. So that we can kind of set objectives for the project that everybody understands as we're moving forward. On the client side, for us, that's about programming and analysis, and like in the chicken coop, it's where we do a lot of brainstorming and precedent research and trying to understand what the client's goals are, so we can set sometimes really simple goals for the building. Sometimes they're simple and sometimes they're not, but and again, then keep returning to those goals throughout the design process. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you very much.